Ghost Hunting in New England,
your favorite spooky podcast. Hello and happy Wednesday. Welcome to Ghost Hunting in New England. I'm your host, Amelia, and I am so excited because I have a very, very special guest here with me today. We are recording on a Monday instead of our usual Thursday night due to Thanksgiving. We hope everyone had an awesome turkey day. And due to time constraints of when we can get the studio, we will not be going over drive-by ghostings tonight. However, this guest is so worth it, we might even have to follow up with him for a second episode later. So I would like to welcome David Wray, who is a tarot card reader, palmist, expert in numismatics.
Okay. Numismatics.
And is author of the book, The Secret Roots of Christianity, Decoding Religious History with Symbols on Ancient Coins. David is also one of the founders of the writing program at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology and has won the highest literary prize at MIT. He worked as a program manager for early internet companies and privately pursued his interest in numismatics.
In numismatics and early Christian history.
After retiring from high tech, he dedicated his efforts towards researching the complex story about the origins of Christianity. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
This is great. So when we got here, we both arrived a little early, and you showed me all kinds of absolutely amazing things, including a witch's ring from 1st century AD. We got to see coins from thousands and thousands of years ago, which was incredible. Things that came off of mummies. It was all fascinating and wild and not something I think you don't expect sitting in Somerville Media Center to be holding a coin dated at 5000 BC.
Well, 500 BC.
Well, I mean, that's incredible.
The coins were all 500, 5th and 6th century BC. I had one artifact that was 1600 BC.
I mean, it's amazing. When I first met you, one of the first things I said was, I know a lot of people who practice divination.
Yes.
And I know people who practice all forms of it. But here, especially in Boston, palmistry is very unique. And I don't know too many palmists. And I definitely don't know any white male palmists with degrees from MIT who worked in high tech. And you're one in a million. So how did you kind of get into the world of spirituality?
I started off being curious about spirituality when I was in high school. Curious about divination in particular. When I was in high school, I was a military brat, so I was in high school in Japan. I went to the library and looked and found a book on coin divination. It was essentially a very simplified version of the I Ching. So I checked it out and took it home, learned how to cast coins and determine and obtain an oracle. And wonder of wonders, I found the results of casting and acquiring an oracle very interesting. It applied to my life. It made me feel like someone was giving me sound advice. In fact, I've found over the years that all of these ways of divination have personalities about them. And I think of the I Ching as a very old, judgmental man, tolerantly indulging you and giving you advice. But discovering that was something worth investigating and worth doing, certainly it was fun. I thought maybe there's something to these other areas of divination. So I studied astrology. I especially got into a kind of astrology that's very rare these days. I think very few people know anything about it, but it's called cosmobiology. I was very taken with that particular type of astrology.
And real quick, what is cosmobiology?
Cosmobiology is a study mostly of midpoints, the point that is between planets in the sky, and the interaction of midpoints and the natal chart of having to do with 45 degrees, 90 degrees, 180 degrees. These are the relationships that that have more action associated them than trines, for example. Trines indicate abilities and talents, but 45 degrees and 90 degrees indicate that something's happening. A focus on that kind of information in a astrological chart produces more hits in terms of interesting information, stuff that you want to know.
Cool.
So at MIT, I met a woman who became my first wife, and she had just come from India, where she had studied palmistry with a guru. She and her friends had organized a class in palmistry. They studied a book, The Laws of Scientific Handreading by Benham, that is a long-time classic in the field and still highly respected in India. So she recommended that I get that book and read it, and she would teach me palmistry. I studied for years and read many, many books while at MIT, and I found that I could do palmistry. It's a really fun training of intuition, and it's a fun thing to do with people in general, because it's an intimate experience holding someone's hand, and you look at the lines, you look at the quality of the poem, and you feel as if you know information about them, which you can share, and frequently you hit exactly right.
And so how then did you get into coin collecting and looking in the history of coins?
I was always interested in coins because my grandfather collected coins. He collected coins, sold coins, mostly American. He would have nothing to do with ancient coins or foreign coins. But I was interested in ancient history. I was interested in U.S. history, too, so I had my collection of United States coins. But then when I became a program manager and made a very good salary, I found myself in a coin store one day and discovered that they had ancient coins for sale. I said, "Oh, do you have a coin of Augustus Caesar with a comet on it?" Which would have been the comet that appeared in Julius Caesar's funeral games. And they said, "Yes, we do."
Wow.
And I bought it.
That's incredible.
So I suddenly became very interested in what ancient coins existed. So I started pouring through databases of ancient coins, trying to understand them. I spent a lot of time getting to know ancient coins, getting to know the ancient world, learning about this, and discovered that there was history in coins that differs from what people think they know about the past. The coins are very good at showing exactly what people thought about in the past. You can get an ancient coin from Rome that shows the world as a globe. They were very clear the world was not flat.
That is fascinating.
In fact,
wow.
I have such a coin that refers to Orbis Mundi, the orb of the world.
Wow.
There's just so much information that people think they know about the past that is not true, and you discover it through the study of coins.
And is that what sparked the idea to write this book?
Yes. I had always wondered how it happened that Christianity took off so quickly. It just didn't make sense that the world was in sin and error, and Jesus was born, and then 300 years later, the entire Roman Empire is Christian. That it didn't compute. I didn't understand how that happened. I guess the popular conception is it was a miracle, and everyone just recognized how wonderful Jesus was. Well, I kept picking at this issue historically, and nothing truly became clear until I started approaching it from the point of view of coins. In trying to figure out what happened about religion and people's ideas about religion in ancient times, I went through the largest databases, which were free at the time. Now, the best database of coins, it is quite expensive actually to connect to it now and do searches. But at that time, that database was free, and I would just download all the images I could and all the data I could about different kinds of religious scenes. Every time I recognized a cultic or religious scene of a characteristic image type, I would download it. And then I took all of the images that I had, sorted them by date, and then tried to sort them by theme. And it was in doing that I came up with the structure for my book, because my book actually goes through, chapter by chapter, the themes that I uncovered. So I found that religious imagery in the past, religious ideas in the past, before Jesus, weren't that different from how people relate to religion these days. Religion was a part of sports in the past. It's a part of the sports now. Religion had its artifacts and had sacred materials in the past before Jesus, and it does now. Much of the structure of Christianity comes from the Greek ideas about religion.
And that's one thing I was also interested in when I was looking through your book, is because you actually begin the book in Sicily.
That's correct.
Which when I first opened it up and I'm expecting to read, this book about Christianity, and I'm like, wait, why are we starting in Sicily, like way before Jesus? But it's interesting. And do you want to touch a little bit more about that? Because one thing I was interested in is you talk about when the Greeks colonized Sicily. As you write in your book, mystery cults that kind of sprung up throughout the area. So what was that about?
Christianity grew up in the Mediterranean region. There were three major types of religion in the Mediterranean region. There were the types of religion that came from Europe, expressed perhaps most eloquently by Celtic worship and Roman worship. There were types of worship from the East, came from ancient Babylonian culture, and there were types of religion that came from Africa. Sicily was located right in the center of the Mediterranean, and it was colonized by people from all three areas. So it was the first place where all of these religions came together and interacted. So you have Sicily is shaped like a triangle, and each side of the triangle was dominated by a particular type of religious understanding. They came to use the same iconography. They came to express their religious ideas using fundamentally Greek iconography, but the ideas were different. From Africa, you had gods that were born on December 25th, and who died and resurrected in the springtime. From the Far East, you had fertility goddesses. From Rome in particular, you had a focus on rules and growing interest in dominating the entire region politically. They also had their primitive expressions of religion. The most important mysteries that existed in ancient time were the Eleusinian mysteries in the Mediterranean region. So those had to do with Hades coming out of the underworld around Eleusis and taking Persephone back into the underworld, and then Demeter searching for her. The place that most Greeks thought that the abduction of Persephone actually happened, however, was on Sicily. That was the place where the final battles had occurred between the Olympian gods and the giants that had dominated the world before the Olympian gods. And one of the last acts had been the goddess Athena picking up the entire island of Sicily and then crashing it down on the leader of the giants, whose body is sort of outlined in the mountains in the north of the island. And at the same time, Typhon was buried under a volcano there, and he continues to bellow forth, but he's trapped below, and the god Hephaestus, or Vulcan, uses the fires from his mouth to make tools for the gods. The god Hades heard all of this ruckus from this war and emerged from underground on Sicily just to see what was going on. There he saw Persephone picking flowers after the end of the war. The god of love, Eros, told his mother, "I'm going to extend the rule of love even into Hades' realm." And so he shot an arrow into the chest of Hades, and he fell in love with Persephone. And love for Hades meant that he grabbed her and dragged her off to the underworld to make her his queen.
Oh, goodness.